All right, guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Colin and I just love to talk sports, specifically college football and basketball, but I dabble a little bit in the professional ranks as well, so make sure you drop in whatever you want me to talk about in the comments, because that's pretty much how I do things. I get ideas. Well, today actually is not one of those ideas, but we got a fun topic, okay? And it's got to do with Ohio State versus coronavirus. And how that might affect their chances at the college football playoff, which I realistically think it has a chance to, cost them, a chance at the playoff. It really does. Let's get into it, okay? So, last weekend, the game against Illinois got canceled. It got canceled late on Friday, I believe. And Ohio State said that they had not met the Big Ten threshold yet, so they could have traveled and played, but they just didn't feel comfortable with it. And if that's true, that's a wise move. I respect them for that. Playing it safe, it's whatever. So now OSU is sitting at 4-0 because that game against Maryland got canceled as well because Maryland was having issues of their own. And now the Illinois game got canceled. So now they have to play these last two games to qualify for the Big Ten championship. And I honestly think that if they don't make the Big Ten championship, they're not going to make the playoff. And I'm kind of going to explain that as we go along here. As of right now, Ohio State can still finish 7-0. With a win in the Big Ten championship. If they qualify, they play these next two games, and then get the Big Ten championship. They will finish 7-0, and I think that's enough for the committee to say, "Hey, Ohio State, you're one of the best teams in college football. Come on in." So here's where it really gets starting to get a little weird. Is that so? The Big Ten, you need to play 6 games, right, to qualify. If the average Big Ten league games drop below 6, it will be adjusted. And in order for that to happen, 12 of the final 14 games are going to need to be canceled, which is probably not likely. So Ohio State is really going to need to play these next 2 games against Michigan State and Michigan in order to qualify for the Big Ten championship. Something else that's super interesting is that, of the teams in the Big Ten that have had issues with coronavirus, Minnesota, Maryland, Wisconsin, all missed 2 games. Big Ten policy says that student athletes can return to competition 21 days post testing positive for coronavirus. If their positive cases have not gone above the Big Ten threshold, that'll be fine. I mean, I'm not sure exactly who has gotten coronavirus. If it's Justin Fields, if it's some guys like Tuff Borland, Shaun Wade, that could be problematic. But we don't know who it is right now. And we don't know if they've gone above that Big Ten threshold. If they don't, that's huge for them. They'll just be playing a little bit undermanned. But I really think that this next game is going to be canceled because we've seen it happen before with 3 different teams. No team in the Big Ten that has had coronavirus issues has just been idle for 1 week. And I think that it's going to be coming down the pipe sometime this week. It sucks. I want them to play because I love college football. Even though I do not like Ohio State, I'm going to get that off my chest. These are unbiased, and I want football to be played because it's good for the sport. And Ohio State, even though their defense is a little suspect, I'm going to be honest, and though there's a little bit of my bias, they are one of the best teams in college football. And you want to see them in the playoff. It's good for football. So it sucks, but I think this game's going to get canceled. But you know what? Let's keep going with this, okay? Here's something that is really going to end up, messing up Ohio State. And again, that's that 21-day off time, where every other conference is they abide by the CDC's 10 days. Why did the Big Ten feel the need to go 21 days? Well, a lot of it had to do with some cardiac heart screenings with concerns about that. But now allegedly those issues, the heart stuff is not necessarily the issue anymore, but I really don't think that it could change it. I feel like, they could try to make the case to change it. I think the Big Ten might, to try to get their best team in and look a little less foolish than they already do for starting the season so late, and stating this unreasonable 21-day rule, but. I don't think that that's going to be lifted, or it really can't, because that would suck because all the other teams are going to be like, whoa, wait, what's going on here? So as OSU's schedule remains right now, it's going to be Michigan State, Michigan, in the Big Ten championship. And so if something happens to where Ohio State can play. Is one of these teams going to freeze them out like Florida State did to Clemson? You know, are they going to wait for Ohio State? Like these teams, Michigan State and Michigan, like the state of their football programs is not ideal. Okay, Michigan State, the last time they beat Ohio State was 2015. The last time Michigan beat Ohio State was 2011. Okay, like I bet Michigan fans would, rather than seeing as wrong as it is, if I were a Michigan fan, I would want my team to play. But you know what? The average Michigan fan is probably fed up with this, and they're like, dude, we're not going to win the game, especially with the Michigan team we have this year. Why don't we just screw over Ohio State? That would be really interesting to me. And honestly, it's not the most unrealistic thing. We saw it with Florida State. Florida State's like, hey, we're not comfortable. You had, all the contact tracing. You guys had contact with, someone who has tested positive recently. And it's very real to say in the sense of, let's be cautious about this. You guys have had some coronavirus issues. We don't want to play. And you know what? Use that as a passive way to entirely derail Ohio State's chances. And as wrong as that is, you know what? It's just how these rivalries are. Like that, we got to take this into account as being a real possibility. And I think that'd be super interesting. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because I think the game is going to get canceled before then. But it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. It could just add another layer to this, probably the best rivalry in college football short of Alabama-Auburn. It's probably right up there with that, to be honest. But that's a separate conversation. What happens if one of those teams frees them out? Like, does the committee take that into account? I don't know. Probably not. They're probably like, okay, well, they're using science and stuff and being like, hey, we're being safe. Yeah, so that's just something else to think about. I honestly believe that nothing short of something fishy and collusion going on is going to keep Ohio State out. I feel like there's going to try to be them just relaxing the rules a little bit to see if they can still make that Big Ten championship to get that one more solid game. Because right now I think Ohio State's strength of schedule is sitting at about 39. And the remaining strength of schedule is not great because it's likely going to be, Michigan State, Michigan, those teams are not strong. And then the Big Ten championship would be, the team from the West, which right now looks like Northwestern, even though they just lost. Northwestern, I know that they're ranked in the top 10, but they're not a top 10 team. Okay, I hate to say it because I was pretty high on them, talking about, does Northwestern have a chance to make the playoff? Because I thought they did. And that was only from the school thought that they could have beat Michigan State, they could beat Minnesota, and they could have beaten Illinois. Like, those are all winnable games for Northwestern. Okay, they would have made the Big Ten championship, and then especially now that Indiana's without Penix, that game's a winnable game too for Northwestern. But they dropped the ball. In Northwestern, they showed how good they actually are, and that's going to suck even more for Ohio State, even if they do, figure out a way to get into the Big Ten championship because. Northwestern's not that strong of a team either, so the strength of schedule this year is not helping Ohio State out. But that's besides the point because I still don't think that they're going to make it into the Big Ten championship because they're not going to get the 6-0 or the 6 games to qualify. Even if this next game against Michigan State does get canceled, they can still get 6 games. But one of those games is going to be that matchup with the East or the Big Ten West equivalent. Of because they're not going to be in the championship, so they'll probably end up playing probably Iowa, and I just don't think that a non-Big Ten champ is going to get in, even though we've seen it before with Ohio State. I don't think that this is the year for that because at that point you're just punishing, some of the SEC teams for playing games, and then you go out west to the Pac-12, and you're not going to let in a 6-0 Ohio State over a 6-0 USC or Washington Pac-12 champion. I suppose it could happen because it's college football and nobody cares about the Pac-12, but I just don't feel like in this season it's going to happen. And I don't think that the Pac-12 is getting in anyways because I don't think 6 games is enough. I really don't. So, that leaves us with what's going to happen to the playoff, okay? Well, I think it's going to be 2 ACC teams and 2 SEC teams because I really think, Clemson right now is favored to beat Notre Dame. And I think that's going to happen because, and it's not the Trevor Lawrence DJ thing. Those guys are both phenomenal quarterbacks. I think the reason why Notre Dame lost or won that game is because of Clemson's defensive injuries, and they missed 3 starters, and I think 2 more got hurt during the game. So it was just unfortunate for Clemson. It sucks because I'm not taking anything away from Notre Dame's win, and it has to suck to be in Notre Dame's position. Whereas that game was a lose-lose because you lose and you're like, you know what, you're not legit. You win, you're like, you know what, you're still not legit. And I hate to do that, but it just is what it is. Clemson is a different team when they're at full strength, and I think that we're going to see that when they play each other again in the ACC championship. But the great thing is for you Notre Dame fans is that Notre Dame's probably still going to be in the college football playoff, and that's that. It's probably going to be so. My playoff right now is Alabama, Notre Dame, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, in that order, and then you know what you got. It's going to be pretty much between Florida. If Florida goes out there and beats Alabama, they're in. And then you got your 2 ACC teams and 2 SEC teams. If Florida doesn't win, then I think Texas A&M is going to be in. Okay, because Texas A&M, they've had a decent schedule. They beat Florida, who's a very good team. They lost to Alabama. Yeah, they lost by 28, but Alabama's the best team in the country. Are there 4 teams in the college football landscape that would be able to play within 28 points of Alabama? I don't think so. I barely think there's one. I think legitimately, I think Alabama would run this year's Ohio State out of the building. And I want you to comment and your thoughts about that, because I have not seen it on defense from Ohio State this year. I have not. We've seen how the best team that they played was Indiana. We saw how Justin Fields did. You know what? I got nothing against Justin Fields. Okay, he's in fact my favorite Ohio State quarterback they've had in a long time. I like him. As much as I don't like Ohio State, I like Justin Fields. And we saw how he played against, the best competition, and their best competition was Indiana. So that's that. I legitimately think that there's probably, and I think Florida can keep it close with Alabama as well. I think they'll be within 28 points. But yeah, so that leads us to, if Notre Dame beats Clemson, what's going to happen? You can make a case for Cincinnati. You could make a case for, Texas A&M just as easily. I think Texas A&M would probably be favored over Cincinnati just because of their strength of schedule. They've played good teams. But if you're letting Ohio State or a Pac-12 team in, at that point you're just punishing people for playing games. And that's that. And we've seen that the playoff committee, what they did this past week, they honored, the teams that played more games, even if they lost a couple. We saw how Georgia got ranked so high. Their 2 losses were by a bunch of points, but they were 2 bad teams. They were by a bunch of points, but they were 2 of the best teams in college football, being Florida and Alabama. So I don't think the committee is going to honor the fact that Ohio State has only played 6 games. Again, if Ohio State, if they figure out a way to play, which I gotta feel like something fishy would have to go on to do that, but hey, it's college football. That stuff happens. Let's be realistic. Then they'd be in. They're in. If Ohio State wins the college or the Big Ten championship, they're still in. But I think that we're about to see a pretty sweet, unique situation. For those who I'm an Illinois fan, okay? So I like to, assume that Ohio State was scared to come play us. But hey, and I know that's probably not the fact. We don't need to fight about this in the comments, okay? We don't need to. I know that's not the case, but I still like to think it. But for me, I don't have a dog in the race, really. I mean, I gravitate to liking Clemson because they beat up on Ohio State. They beat up on Alabama. I guess they're probably pretty even with Alabama, if we're being honest. But they're like the lesser of all the evils. And so I root for them. But still, I don't have a real dog in the race. So it's going to be pretty entertaining for us that, don't care who gets in, really, to see what the committee does. Because there's going to be a lot of fan bases that are pretty pissed off because some of these teams honestly should make it. You know what? Maybe they should just expand it to 6 for this year. I've heard that idea floated around there. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that it's going to stay at 4, and there's going to be literally 2 or 3 teams that are on the outside looking in that could easily have made a relatively similar case for getting in. But that's what I got. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. I appreciate you for bearing with me and making it this long. I love talking this stuff. Make sure to drop what you want me to talk about in the comments. Please hit that subscribe button. Hey, and if you don't, follow me on TikTok at Colin Brandon. That's where I'm the most active. Dropping sports takes. Talking with the guys like pretty much all day, every day. It's a lot of fun. Until next time, we'll see you.